Hello, friends. Glad you guys got YouTube notices for the first time, maybe because I put it up a few minutes earlier than usual. I'll try doing that more often. See if that works better. All right. This is my shirt given to me by Waylon, who you sometimes see come on here. It's a bit big, but I feel like wearing it anyway. Kind of look like I lost weight. Let's catch up with... Hi, everybody. Let's catch up with Dhruva. Dhruva has succeeded in his yoga and compelled Vishnu to come directly before him. And then spoke to Vishnu very nicely. Now we're going to have Vishnu's reply. So it says here, wonderfully praised by the brilliant and resolutely determined boy, the all-attractive who is the devotee of his devotee, reciprocated the child's affection and spoke. That's a very important thing about Vishnu, is that he's very reciprocal. So his neutrality is very interesting. It's a different concept of neutrality. The Supreme Being is neutral. It doesn't take anybody's side. But the neutrality isn't passive. It's not like neutral gear in a car. It's active neutrality such that he responds to everybody according to the way they treat him, with no bias. So, for example, if a really rich guy is acting like a jerk, you slap him. It doesn't matter that because he's rich, he gets away with it. If a really poor guy is acting really nice, you praise him. It doesn't matter that he's poor. If somebody that comes from this neighborhood does something good, you reward them. It doesn't matter what neighborhood they come from. That's the neutrality. The neutrality of Vishnu isn't passive or non-active. It's active neutrality. So he's the devotee of his devotee. That's the interesting result. The end result here is that he falls in love with people who love him. And he worships people who worship him. So he reciprocates the child's affections and speaks to him. He says, royal little boy, I know what you are striving for with all your wonderful vows. So if you remember to yesterday, Dhruva didn't really tell Vishnu what he wanted. And the reason for it is because he's a bit shy to say so, because now that he's got Vishnu in front of him, it seems a little bit silly what he wanted. So Vishnu says, I already know what you want. I know what you are striving for with all your wonderful vows, and I will grant it to you with all my blessings, though it is very rare. You wanted to attain Uttama, the highest place. You wanted to attain the most wondrous place in all the three worlds, even greater than what your father or your grandfather ever had. So that means even greater than what Brahma possesses. Brahma possesses Satyalok. Now, this is very interesting as far as nakshatras and yogatars go. And we could speak a bit about this. The nakshatra Abhijit is said to belong to Brahma. And it belongs to Brahma. And not just Brahma as the progenitor like Rohini does, but Brahma as Brahma, the wise, the source of all the Veda and all wisdom. People often wonder why Abhijit, why there's 27 nakshatras in the zodiac, although there's 28 nakshatras in total. The reason, Vishnu is actually going to explain the reason here, though that's not his intent, but The reason is that the stars circulate. Over the course of a day, the stars circulate around a pole, the North Pole. It's because it's actually the Earth that's spinning, but the stars appear to circulate around the pivot point of the Earth, which is the pole, the North Pole. So wherever the pole points amidst the stars, that star will appear not to move. Now, Abhijit is supposed to be Satyaloka Brahma's realm. Now, the way that the precession of equinoxes work is also something to mention right here. Because the pole of the Earth also has a bit of an orbit to it. It's not perfectly balanced. It's a bit off balance, so as the Earth spins, the pole also really slowly spins. So that causes the relationship between the Earth and the stars to slowly change around this kind of orbit. It takes 26,000 years. So this star Abhijit, typically it's Vega. The Yogatar for Abhijit is Vega, which is the North Star. It's in the circle of the orbit of the North Pole. So at some points in history, Abhijit's the North Star. So it's what you do with nakshatras is that all the stars revolve around the central one, and their coordinates are the ray that you use to map their coordinates goes through the non-moving central one, and then comes down to the ecliptic. So the 28th nakshatra is the pivot point for all the nakshatras. It's not a nakshatra that's along the wheel of the zodiac, but it's the pivot point for the nakshatras. So it's a nakshatra, and it's fundamental to the existence of all. It establishes the existence of all the other 28 nakshatras, but it's 27, but it's not in them. That's why in the Gita, Krishna says, of the nakshatras, I am Abhijit. Because it's exactly like the presence of Vishnu in the jivas. It's not actually manifest in the jivas, but it's the foundation on which the jivas are based is Vishnu. Similarly, the Abhijit is not really manifest in the zodiac, but it's the foundation upon which the zodiac nakshatras are based. Now, the interesting point is that in periods of history, Vega, which is the Abhijit Yogatar, drifts from alignment with the North Pole. Because actually speaking, the North Pole is kind of moving, but apparently Vega drifts. So it's not always the highest point in the sky. So at the point in time in which this is happening with Dhruva and Vishnu, it was similar to maybe a point like now. At this point in time where we are, Vega is a little bit south from the North Pole. It's a similar astrological configuration here in Dhruva's time, but it's not exactly the same, because there's a different star there, a different bright star. It would be interesting to actually break out some astronomy software, like NASA type software, and actually figure out what star it was, and then you can get some windows of the dates in which this could have actually happened. Anyway, listen to what Vishnu is going to tell Dhruva. He says you wanted to achieve a place higher than even Brahma has, beyond the three worlds, are the most wondrous place in the three worlds beyond what even Brahma possesses. So let's see what he says. He points up into the night sky, and he says, "See that very bright star? It doesn't move. So we call it Dhruva Kshiti." Dhruva means patient, and Kshiti means positioning or placement. Or Kshiti means falling away. So Dhruva means not falling away. Dhruva Kshiti. So it doesn't move. Like nakshatra, the word kshiti is the basis for the word nakshatra, also means not falling away. because the stars keep their configuration with one another. It doesn't shayata. It doesn't fall apart. Planets, they move, so their position in reference to each other is kshaya. It changes. But nakshaya are the stars and how they relate to each other. That's nakshatra. Those individual ones are called nakshatra because they're nakshaya. So, but all of the nakshatras, although they keep their position relative to each other, they spin around every day as the Earth spins, right? They spin around in the sky. If you ever saw a time-lapse photo of the stars, you can see them make these big circles. Then there's one star, usually, often, depending on the period of history, the North Pole could point to a star that actually doesn't move. So it's totally nakshaya. And that's called Dhruvakshita. So Vishnu pointed to a star. He says, see that one? We call it Dhruvakshita because it doesn't move. It's like the hub around which the wheel of the brilliant constellations, stars, and planets revolve. It's like the central pillar around which bulls walk to turn the tills. So that's really an astronomy. That's the function that Abhijit Nakshatra plays. So it would be good to break out a NASA or whatever software to see, is he talking about Abhijit? Or is he talking about a different North Star? Because he says it's beyond Brahma's place. And Abhijit is associated to Brahma. And his next statement is that no one has ever claimed that star. So maybe he's talking about, this would be interesting research to do. Maybe he's talking about Abhijit and it's not actually claimed by a deva, but it's assumed to belong to Brahma. Or maybe Brahma doesn't have to claim it. No conventional deity has claimed it. Because there's not that many bright stars that are up there. Anyway, that's something interesting for any astronomers who happen to listen to this, who have access to the kind of software that could do historical regression. So he says, no one has ever claimed that star, but Dharma, Agni, Kashyapa, Shukra, and the great forest-dwelling sages worship that place by clockwise circumambulation, just like the stars. So all of the, have you ever heard of parikrama? Parikrama is a real simple practice. It's a way to respect something. You can respect a person by you walking around them. But you would walk clockwise, so you keep them on your right. It's easier to do with a place because the place stands still, and they often do parikrama around a sacred place. You walk around the place, but you keep it on your right. Which for some weird reason in Japan and maybe in all of Buddhism, they flip it and do it to their left. But in Hinduism, it's to the right. So the concept of it either comes from, and it's the whole swastika thing is based on this clockwise movement of the stars around the pole star. So he's saying all the other stars worship that star because they all perform parikrama. They all move around it clockwise. So that star is being worshipped by Kritika and Bharani. And the other one's Kashyapa. I'm not sure which star that refers to. Shukra maybe refers to Venus, the planet, the brightest star in the sky. The great forest-dwelling sages is probably the Saptarishis. So that's like Big Dipper, Ursa Major. All these very famous stars, they worship that one. See that star? You wanted to achieve the highest place better than even what your grandfather Brahma has. Well, see that place over there? That's a pretty amazing spot. So Bardo, Nakshaya just refers to stars. Like the Greeks have the same concept. They have wandering stars and stars that don't wander. Wandering stars are planets. Stars that don't wander are stars. In the opening, practically the opening astrological statement of Parashara or Horashastra is the same exact thing. It says, see all the dots of lights in the sky? Those are called nakshatras because they're always there, but some of them are fixed, and so we're really going to apply the term nakshatra to them, but some of them move. So we won't call them nakshatras, we'll call them graha, because they move. They grillata, they move. So nakshatras constellations keep their configuration relative to each other. And then Dhruva is the reference point, or Abhijit is the reference point around which all of them circulate. So of all, even compared to the fixed ones, Dhruva is fixed. So these guys worship that star because it is timeless. That star's timeless. It doesn't move and persists beyond the end of ages. So the other worlds, they get destroyed through the yugas and things, and in manvantaras and different huge cosmic cycles of time. Other worlds get destroyed, but that one doesn't. So he says he's going to give... Polaris is the current star that's pointing at that the North Pole is basically pointing at. So he says that I'm going to give you that star. Now, the interesting thing about that star is that that's actually the portal to Vaikuntha. The Dhruva's realm is actually the portal to Vaikuntha. Probably the 4 Kumars passed through it. So anyway, Vishnu gives this cool cosmic astrological information. He says, you wanted the highest place in the universe. You wanted to climb up into the lap of your dad, right? And then you realized you wanted something even better than that. You wanted to climb up to the highest place. That's the highest place. That's going to be your abode. But first, Vaikuntha is the universe which is not based on ignorance. The universe which is based on real perception of reality is called Vaikuntha. It's the place that's without mistake. Vaikuntha is in contrast to this place, which is Mayadama, which is the place of confusion or illusion. So the Vishnu says, but before you go to that star, go home. Your father, you'll hear tons about Vaikuntha. Your father will soon retire to the forest. So your dad is getting old. So that's interesting. They don't have all their kids at the same time, right? I think the 3 daughters were birthed first, and then the 2 sons, Uttanapada and Priyavrata, later. And then Uttanapada didn't just have kids right away. He had kids later in life. His life was very long. So he says, your dad's getting old and he's going to leave his kingdom soon. Go. He's going to give it to you. He's going to give you his kingdom. His kingdom is the earth. Rule it. Rule the earth under the protection of morality for 36,000 years. Your body will not become old. So Dhruva was king of the earth for 36,000 years without aging as a result of his yoga and Vishnu's consequent blessing, which seems phenomenal to us at the time, but in the yuga that it's in, it's terribly abnormal. The lifespans are much longer in other epochs of the cosmos. In the current epoch, it's about 100 years. But in the Satya Yuga, I think they say it's 100,000 years. So he says, I will give you this star, but first go home and rule the earth for 36,000 years. Don't worry, you won't get old. Dhruva would wonder why his father would give him the kingdom. Why is my father going to give me the kingdom? I'm the younger son of the secondary wife. what's going on with with my older brother and the primary wife, Suruchi? So Hari assured him that they would not interfere. Uttama will be lost while hunting, he said. And his distraught mother will search for him in the forest and wander into a forest fire. Now Dhruva's face gets long. I don't want that to happen. So I would prefer not to go home. If going home is going to mean that my brother has to not be the king, so fate has to get him out of the way, so he has to get lost in the forest, and then his mother's going to get lost searching for him. But Hari reassures him that his brother and co-mother will perish anyway. Even if you don't go back, this is still going to happen to them. Because look at how evil they were. This is the inevitable doom of insulting a good person. And he says, I'm assuring you, he assured Dhruva that Dhruva would enjoy the kingdom in a transcendental way. He quote, "You will use your royal wealth to worship me, the true heart of all ceremonies, and will distribute the fabulous results of such ceremonies in generous charity. This will make you very happy and truly blessed. You will not forget me for a moment, not even in the very end." So Dhruva is also a little bit like 36,000 years. I got to deal with regular life. Here I am right in front of you. I got to deal with like a regular life for 36,000 years. So Vishnu says, don't worry about it. It'll actually be awesome. You'll be really wealthy and you'll be using the wealth to worship me and then feed everybody and clothe everybody and shelter everybody. And that will make you super happy. I'll be with you at every moment. You won't be forgetful of me at any moment. Not even at the very end. Then Dhruva says, okay, at the end, what happens? Then Hari points to the star again. At the end, after your 36,000 years there, you'll enter into that respected center of all the worlds, superior even to the stars of the sages. When you enter that gateway, he calls it a gateway. He says, when you enter that gateway, you will attain my own abode. That place, the Dhruva. Now, I have to check I should go back and relook at the Sanskrit to make sure that it says, see that bright star up there? Because he may also be talking about Dhruva. Dhruva can also be the concept of the North Pole, not the specific star that it points at. So anyways, it's not like it's a physical place in the universe, but it's the portal into Vaikuntha. This is when you enter that gateway, you will attain my own abode from which you will never depart. So that's the highest place to achieve. We got some more time. We'll see what happens now with Dhruva. That's pretty amazing. This is cool stuff, right? We needed to get a little bit more far out in spacey with our Bhagavatam, and here it is. After offering his own place, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. I think that I need to edit this, obviously. I think Vishnu had offered Dhruva his own place. You can come and live with me in my place. After offering his own place, Dhruva adored all attractive... I get it. This is poorly worded. It's really difficult to translate from Sanskrit and get it into lucid English. It needs a lot of edits. After offering his own place, Dhruva's adored all attractive returned to his own abode, riding like a flag atop Garuda as the boy looked on with regrets. So after Vishnu had given Dhruva his own place, come to my place, then he's described as Dhruva's adored all attractive. That's the name for Vishnu. Then he went back to his own place, riding atop Garuda like a flag rides atop a pole. Dhruva looks on, watches him leave with regrets. Dhruva's vows to worship Vishnu's feet had borne fruit, and he was now relieved of those difficult strictures. Yet he was not very happy as he returned home. So that's weird. Dhruva is now unhappy. Vidura is going to ask questions about this, but even Maitreya is saying it's pretty strange. He's done with all this. His diet is finished. He was eating an apple every 3 days, and then he was eating water every 9 days, and then he was eating air every 12 days. And then he just stopped everything and just standing. He was really putting himself through it. Now he got all the results from that he wanted, and he's done with that. He doesn't even have to deal with that anymore. He can live an enjoyable life. But he's sad. And he just met Vishnu, but he's sad. Miss Vinay says, of course he's unhappy Vishnu left. But Vishnu, okay, maybe that's it. Let's see. Vidura, when he hears this, he becomes confused and asks, in a single lifetime, now Vidura is asking Maitreya a question. In a single lifetime, he achieved the extremely rare treasure of affectionately worshipping Hari's feet in his supreme abode. Yet he felt like a person who had not fulfilled his goals. In a single lifetime, in a couple of months, he achieved this amazing thing of having direct audience with Vishnu. Why does he feel like he's a failure? Why is he unhappy? Why was he dissatisfied with himself? Did he not realize the value of what he just achieved? 36,000, you may think 36,000 years, and then you get to go to Vaikuntha. If you hear that you get to go to Vaikuntha, 36,000 years is nothing. Who cares? Maitreya explained that Dhruva was morose. Let's see if anybody... Don't know. Think to yourself, what's the real reason why Dhruva is morose? Miss Vinay thinks it's because Vishnu left. Maitreya is going to explain why he's morose. He's morose because he thought of the misfortune that awaited his mother's co-wife. He's thought of the misfortune. He's really troubled by the fact that his co-mother, Suruchi, who he used to hate, and his brother, who he used to envy, he's really upset that they're going to have a bad fate, that they have bad destiny. Right. Isn't that interesting how he's been transformed by his audience with Vishnu? And by his yoga even, the capacity to have audience with Vishnu couldn't have arisen without the destruction of those kind of mentalities towards people. So by the time he's gotten to this stage, he has no more of those feelings. See what I'm saying? He started out, this whole story is about how somebody could start out with poor motives. But if they take to the right path, as long as they actually respect the guidance of the good sage on that path, like Narada, they get purified of those impure motives. So he unhappily felt that it was at her expense that the Master of Liberation granted him liberation. He was also morose because Vishnu had left. So you're also right, Ms. Vinay. As a result of, and he thought he left, he made me work out 36,000 years here because I still have these impurities, my ulterior motive and all that. He felt sad about that. He felt that he would have to endure 36,000 years without Vishnu because of initially revengeful motives towards his co-mother. Now he's thinking. Right. Now he's thinking, even the four celibates, Sananda and the others, could not attain in their entire lives what I attained in 6 months. 6 months he did it for. He realizes what he did. He achieved in 6 months what Brahma's first children could not achieve in their whole life. They left Vaikuntha, they were kicked out, or they were escorted to the door to leave, or they had to leave. They weren't said, nobody said, Vishnu didn't say, hey, just stay here. But Vishnu gave Dhruva Vaikuntha, come to Vaikuntha. So he achieved what they couldn't achieve in 6 months. Yet I have left the shade of his feet because my mind wants other things. Oh, fie on my selfishness. Just look at my misfortune. I went to the feet of he who could cut down temporary existence, and there I begged for something temporary. I am the greatest fool. Fate would not allow me to accept Narada's wise advice to forget my co-mother's insults. My proud, intolerant thoughts preferred to wallow in their own foulness. Absorbing myself into the dreamlike dooms of the temporary external world, I suffered divisions between my brother and myself. hating him in my heart as if he was my enemy. I begged for useless things, things that are like medicine for dead people. I like that analogy, medicine for dead people. I underwent extremely difficult austerities and pleased the soul of all souls who cuts people free from temporary existence, yet I begged for something temporary. I have no good fortune at all. Oh, how stupid. I begged for a kingdom. I am like the poor idiot who asked the emperor for a few husks of grain. Yeah, it's kind of similar, Karen. Maitreya concluded... Oh, let's keep going. I love this story. Maitreya concluded by telling Vidura, my dear, devotees are like you. They only want to taste the pollen from the lotus feet of Mukunda. Outside of this service, they have no personal interest at all. They think of themselves as very wealthy by accepting whatever destiny automatically bestows to him. So Dhruva has become a genuine Bhagavat Bhakta. He's become a genuine devotee. And now he's looking back on his previous condition and saying, God, that was dumb. But now he's at the stage where all he wants is the company of Vishnu. Now let's see basically what happens when Dhruva returns. And then we'll stop at where it talks about his life as a prince. Depending on how fast we read it. I'm predicting, or I'm telling myself we'll stop there. All right, so when Narada told the king that his son was returning, so Narada, while this darshan is going on between Vishnu and Dhruva, Narada goes to the king and says, the time is done, your son's coming back home now. Thank you, Hopi. When Narada told the king that his son was returning, the king could not believe it. How can a bad person like me get such good fortune, he thought. For him, it was like hearing that someone was coming back from death. But how could he not believe Narada, the sage of the gods? So he became overwhelmed with eager joy. In great delight, he gave an extremely valuable pearl necklace to Narada. He rushed out to meet his son on his best gold-bedecorated chariot, yoked to his finest horses, surrounded by the wise, the elders, the ministers, and the family. Conches and drums resounded along with flutes and mantras as the procession left the city. So the king pulled out every wealth that he had, put it all together, and went to greet Dhruva, who he heard is coming back home. The king had lovingly escorted Dhruva's mother Suniti onto her own palanquin. Now he's very careful to show great respect to Dhruva's mother, because he realized what a fool he was in the past. So he made sure that she was super well respected and she had her own car. And she escorted her co-wife Suruchi and her son Uttama to sit by her side. She made sure that Suruchi and Uttama were well taken care of. The queens were both beautifully ornamented in golden jewelry. Then they went out like that. Seeing his son coming towards them from a nearby grove, the king quickly got off his chariot and ran towards the boy, overwhelmed with love. He embraced the child in his arms for a long time, sighing with a thrilled heart. He noticed that the boy was very different, for all fetters of impurity had been vanquished when he touched Vishnu's feet. The king kept his nose in Dhruva's hair while a shower of cold tears from his eyes bathed his son. The king's most cherished desire had been fulfilled. Dhruva respected his father's feet and received a flood of benedictions and questions. Then he bowed his head to his two mothers. He retained no hatred for Suruchi, because he was the best of the civilized spiritual people. Suniti fainted, while Suruchi picked up the little boy at her feet and embraced him. Her voice was choked with tears as she stammered a blessing, Jeev. She could only say Jeev. She was trying to say Chiranjeev, which means live long. And mothers typically say this to the kid. This is the typical mother blessing. When the mother blesses the child, she should typically say Chiranjeevi or Chiranjiva. May you live long. But she couldn't say it because she was so emotional. This is Suruchi. Although she had embarrassingly lost her hold on the king as a result of this boy, still she couldn't help express her affectionate respects to Dhruva. So that's very interesting. This boy wrecked her whole game. She was playing this game great. She had the king of the earth wrapped around her little finger. And this boy screwed the whole thing up. She should hate this boy. But she couldn't. She loved him. She felt so much affection for him. And Maitreya says, he gives an example. He says, water automatically flows downward. Water can't help but flow down. And it's just as natural and automatic to feel respect and friendship towards anyone who is respected and befriended by all attractive Hari. The first quality, even if you just get good at the practice of bhakti, the quality that develops is called Shubhada. That's the second quality. Kleshagni Shubhada. Shubhada is the second quality. Shubhada includes Priyata, which means that you become lovable. People love you. Because just as water flows naturally down, people love a lovable person. Somebody who loves Vishnu and is loved by Vishnu is lovable. They don't have hatred in their heart. This is like, also potentially explains this in Yoga Sutras, that a person who perfects ahimsa, or non-violence, never encounters any violence. And a person who truly perfects non-violence can walk into the middle of a conflict, of a physical conflict, in the presence. Their presence in a physical conflict disarms the conflict. So similarly, a person that's full of bhakti, they can't be hated. So if you're getting hated by people, maybe there's something wrong with your bhakti. Maybe you haven't really practiced it so well. So anyway, this is the result with... this is the result here. Suruchi was so affectionate to Dhruva. When the brothers, Uttama and Dhruva, saw one another, they became overwhelmed with love and embraced one another over and over again as they shed downpours of tears with hair standing on end. This is also your question yesterday, is if somebody realizes Vishnu, do they become cold and detached from their family? Here's Dhruva. When Suniti embraced her child, Suniti, the biological mother of Dhruva, when she embraced her child, her boy who was far dearer to her than breath, the touch of his body freed her at last from all her worries. She was so stressed out while he was out in the forest for 6 months. When he came back and she could actually embrace him in her arms, all of her stress was gone. The mother of that hero bathed him in the auspicious water of her tears and the milk that flowed from her breasts. This is one of the anubhavs this is one of the sattvic abhavs, or involuntary autonomic responses to emotion, that can happen in mothers. And you don't see it that much these days because the motherly love isn't that pure. But you do still even see it these days. Even when their mother is not lactating. The child is grown up and everything. All of the people joyful. So actually there's 2 sattvic abhavs here for the scholars of bhakti in the crowd. She's crying. Oh, there's lots of sattvic abhavs going on. The hair standing on end is one of the sattvic abhavs. The crying is another one. Crying can be sattvika or anubhav, depending on if it's voluntary or involuntary. Cold tears are usually sattvic abhav, and they result from happiness. Hot tears result from unhappiness. All this information is there for you guys to gradually discover from the Bhagavatam. All the people joyfully told the queen. This sounds like what happened to me after my train crashed in India. People came up to me and said something very similar to this. Thanks to destiny, you have regained the boy you lost for such a long time. They came up to me and said, thanks to destiny, we didn't die. Because the train that I was on should have exploded. Because the gasoline tank was punctured by the train track. So people were pretty amazed. Anyway, so what the people told the queen was, thanks to destiny, you have regained the boy you lost for such a long time. He will destroy all our suffering and protect the earthly kingdom. You are certainly a devotee of all. They're talking to Suniti. You are certainly a devotee of the all-attractive who protects his devotee from all misfortune. By your meditation on him, you prevented your son from dying. This is an amazing accomplishment. So there's some extra information here. Behind the scenes, why was Dhruva able to be successful? It's the blessing of the two other bhaktas. It's Narada's blessing, and especially it's the blessing of his mother, who's a bhakta. And her meditation on her son's well-being was what was empowering Dhruva to be able to do that incredibly extreme austerity. So this is also the hint. If you want to be successful in bhakti, it's not a solo effort. Bhakti is nothing solo. Bhakti is unified. It's not maverick, solo, independent, conquer the world. It's by the blessings of your people that you're related to. That's how you succeed. All the people expressed their joyful praises. The king placed Dhruva with his brother atop an elephant, and they all returned to the city amidst delightful celebrations. So we'll stop it there. There's still a tiny bit left in the chapter. It's Friday. Everywhere the city was decorated to welcome Dhruva. The houses adorned their arches with glittering dolphin shark makaras, and the pillars of banana trees bedecked with bunches of fruits and flowers, and fresh betel nuts, all collected from the nearby groves. Lamps were lit at each door, alongside fresh pots of water and hanging strands of mango leaves, flags, and pearls. Oleander flowers ornamented the city's walls and gates, and the walls of the city's houses. The towering golden spires glittered. Everything was clean, the parks as well as the roads. The benches alongside the lanes were coated in sandalwood and furnished with offerings of puffed rice, grains of rice, and barley, and fruits and flowers. When the women of the city saw Dhruva on the paths, they would throw mustard seeds and barley grains, sprinkle drops of yogurt and water, shower flowers and auspicious soft grass, and offer him fruits. With motherly affection, those gentle ladies pronounced blessings and sang songs to Dhruva. Hearing their beautiful singing, Dhruva entered his father's palace. His father and he constantly relaxed together, like celestial gods in that exquisite palace, adorned with clusters of precious stones. His bed was like the soft white foam of milk, and he was decorated with ivory and gold. The bed was decorated with ivory and gold. His seat and furniture were made from very valuable woods and decorated with the finest gold. The marble walls were inlaid with great sapphires and adorned with iridescent jewel lamps held by beautiful jewel maidens. Nice lamps. The crystals, crystal chandeliers. But the chandeliers are shaped like maidens, and they're holding the chandeliers, and the lamps are shining from those crystals. The delightful garden of the palace had ever-flowering trees, couples of birds and peacocks, and honey-intoxicated hummingbees. The palace lakes had stair banks carved from cat's-eye stone, and were opulent with white and blue lotus lilies, swans, ducks, geese, and crane. The philosopher King Uttanapad himself was amazed to see all this opulence. The king himself was amazed to see this. Where did all his jewels and stuff come from? The king was amazed to see his own palace. So it wasn't from his treasury. So Narada Muni once explained to him that it was due to the greatness of his son. Because of the greatness of your son, this is all manifest here. And when he heard that, he became delighted and wonderstruck. When Dhruva became 15, the king took the approval of his beloved citizens and ministers and made Dhruva the ruler of the world. This is also an important thing. You can't put a king on the throne without the approval of the citizens. But it's not democracy. It's monarchy. There's a king, but the king is not installed against the wishes of the people. If the people hate the king can't be installed. The king can't just pick anybody he wants to succeed him. The people have to approve it. That's the Vedic monarchy system. So it has an element of democracy to it, but although it's not democracy, democracy is the people are just picking. in this system, the king is picking who should be the next king. He probably was training this guy to be the king the whole time. But the people have to bless it. And the ministers as well. Recognizing himself as entering old age, the protector of the world gave up all attachments and departed for the forest, intent on his spiritual destination. So that is the end of this part of the story. Next part of the story, you're going to hear about the brother and the mother Suruchi falling into trouble. That trouble actually comes to pass. And how does Dhruva respond to it? It's a very big drama that happens next. Barda says, how do you know if any bhakta cares for you? That's a strange question. Don't you know if people care for you? They take care of you. Nice lamps, bro. Yes. Anil says, can we also learn from this that when we wish the best for others in a pure devoted way, it is powerful? Actually, you know what I think we should learn from this? You can't really wish the best for others until you understand Bhagavan. You'll always have a spontaneous reflex to put yourself first. It's natural. So it's not until you understand that Bhagavan is the root of you and the root of this other person that you start to truly, reflexively, instinctively, 100% deeply wish no harm to anybody. Wish well for everybody. All right, guys. Wait, if your family are toxic or abusive, how do you interact or live with them? And we've talked about this a lot. You don't allow harmful behavior is harmful not only to you, but harmful behavior is 10 or 100 times more harmful to the performer of the behavior. So if you love somebody, you don't empower, or what do they call it? You don't empower or enable their harmful behavior of others or of you. Not just out of respect for yourself, but out of respect and concern for them. And most harmful behavior is when the person who should be a caretaker is a actual enemy, like a mother or father, or brother or uncle or something. Aunt, although. Anyway, so it actually is your duty to these people to get out of the situation that enables them to do these things to you. All right, guys. I'll see you on Monday. Thank you, everybody. This was a fun one, huh? See you on Monday for this really exciting next part. It gets this big drama, and we're going to get another big battle, and we're going to hear a lot about wizards and magical warfare and stuff like that in the next part coming up. So come back on Monday on time, same time.